Dear friends, welcome back to my channel Enjoy Learning. Today, with great effort, I've tried my best to make this video on figures of speech worth watching. Whether you are a student of primary section or junior section, this video will help you out in understanding the exact meaning of figures of speech, why are they used, and how to identify its different types. So let's begin with what is a figure of speech. So let me tell you that language can be used in two ways, literally and figuratively. Literal language is direct and uses the real definition and meaning of words and phrases. But a figure of speech is a word of phrase using figurative language, language that has other meaning than its normal definition. It relies on implied or suggested meaning of the words rather than the word-to-word dictionary meaning. So you have to keep this in mind. You have to make a vivid imagination in order to understand what this figure of speech stands for, rather than considering the dictionary meaning. When using figures of speech, words will diverge from their literal meaning to give a more specialized and effective meaning to these words. For example, on hearing the school bell, the kids ran out of the class as fast as lightning. Here, it doesn't mean that the kids' speed is same as the lightning, but the both are just similar. It implies that they are running with great speed. So let's begin with the types of figures of speech. First is alliteration, second simile, metaphor, oxymoron, refrain, personification, pun, hyperbole, euphemism, and metonymy. So in this video, I will focus on few important types of figures of speech, but remember the types are nearly endless. So in part 1, I will teach up the first 5 and in part 2 the next 5. So let's begin with the first type, which is alliteration. In alliteration, the same consonant sound is repeated in consecutive or closely spaced words in the same sentence. For example, she sells seashells by the seashore. Here you can see that the word S is repeated in consecutive words. Consecutive means words that come one after the other. In the second example, slithering snakes slither silently through the grass. Here also the letter S is repeated. So by finding that the letters are being repeated in a sentence, you can immediately say that the figure of speech in this sentence is alliteration. So in both the examples, the letter S is being repeated in the consecutive words. The second type is simile. A simile is used to show comparison between two unlike things which have a particular trait or characteristic in common. In a simile, we always use two words, like and as. For example, she is as brave as a lion. So here two unlike things. A girl and a lion are being compared, but here they have one thing in common, that is their bravery. Let's come to the second example, which is the building is as tall as a mountain. So here also two unlike things, a building and a mountain is compared. But it does not mean that the height of building is same as that of a mountain. It just simply means that the building is really very tall. So let's consider the third example, which is the internet is like a window to the world. Here also two very unlike things, internet and a window, are compared. So saying that internet is like a window to the world implies that it lets you see anything and everything. So both have one thing in common, both let you see everything around you. In all these examples, you have seen that either the word as or like is being there in the sentence. So this indicates that the figure of speech is simile. In simile, as and like are always used. Keep this in mind. Let's come to the third type, which is a metaphor. A metaphor is used to compare two unrelated ideas or things. It helps to explain an idea, but if you take the literal, that means word by word meaning, it will sound absurd. It is used to describe something by calling it something quite different. So let's consider the examples. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merrily players. Here also, two unlike things, world and a stage is compared, and men and women are being compared to players. But here you don't find the use of the words as and like. So you can say that here also we have comparison between two unlike things, so it's a metaphor. The second example is, her tears were a river flowing down her cheeks. So here, as a river is so much larger than a few tears, the metaphor is a creative way of saying that the person is crying a lot. Although the two things, tears and river, are different, but they have one thing in common. In both, what flows? Water flows. So let's consider how do we find that whether the figure of speech in a particular sentence is a simile or a metaphor. So though both are very similar, but they have one basic difference. In a simile, the comparison happens with the help of words as and like, always remember, whereas a metaphor does not have either of these two words. For example, time is as precious as gold. It's a simile. Why? Because here you can find that the word as is being used. So it is a simile. Time is considered to compared to gold. The next example, life is a roller coaster ride. Here, life is called something different, a roller coaster ride. So this metaphor refers to the fact that as in a roller coaster, you have crests and troughs, ups and downs, the acceleration and the smooth falling moments. The same is life. In life also, you encounter joys and sorrows, successes and failures. So in this way, the two unlike things are in a way similar. They have a particular thing in common. So let's take up the fourth type of figures of speech, which is oxymoron. It is a phrase that combines two words that seem to be opposite to each other. You can see it in examples. See the first one, a deafening silence. Which thing comes in your mind by considering the word deafening? If the sound is high, then this word could be used, but the next term is what? Silence, where there is no sound at all. So two opposite terms, opposite words are being used together. Similarly, small crowd. Crowd is itself a large group of people. So again, two opposite words, small and large, are being used together. Similarly, sweet sorrow. How can sorrow be sweet? Sorrow is always painful. It's distressing. So this way, oxymoron, you can identify oxymoron. The next type is refrain. It is a line or a group of lines that repeats at regular intervals in different stanzas. It gives a rhythmic effect to the poem. It also emphasizes on a particular idea through repetition. So let's consider the example, which is, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. So these lines are from the poem Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. So again here, the poet uses the refrain in the last two lines of this poem. He repeats the line twice, and miles to go before I sleep. It gives the rhyme to the poem and lay stress on the responsibilities which he had to fulfill before dying. So this is how you can identify the different types of figures of speech. So let me revise all the five types. In alliteration, the first letter of consecutive words means words which come one after the other is being repeated. In simile, we make comparison by using the word like and as. Always remember, you have to identify by these words that whether it is a simile or a metaphor. In a metaphor also, you make comparison, but there is no use of such words as and like. You make comparison between two unlike things. Then in oxymoron, two words with opposite meanings are being used together. For example, deafening silence, sweet sorrow. Then the last type, which was refrain. The same line is being repeated in different stanzas. It is used to lay emphasis on a particular idea in the poem. So, for the remaining figures of speech, watch part 2 of this video, and if you have not subscribed my channel yet, please subscribe. Okay, don't forget to like and share. Take care. Thank you.